Hey guys, what's up? So we have a brand new archetype that's being released within the Rise of the Duelist, and these are called Dragmas. So you have Ecclesia, the Dragma Saint. This is a level 4 light spellcaster effect monster with 1500 attack and 1500 defense. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn each. 1. If a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. 2. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Dragma card from your deck to your hand, except Ecclesia the Dragon Saint. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. And 3. It cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. Just from the looks of how this card interacts, it seems that the Dragmas work as against extra deck monsters, so this could actually be quite a good strategy to use as a rogue strategy, just to deal with your opponent's extra deck. The first effect to just is able to just special summon itself, considering your opponent is most likely to have an extra deck monster on their field, so this is good for running second. The second effect of it is able to search for one of your Dragma cards. So this is the rotor for the deck. And the third effect prevents it being destroyed by battle with a special summoned extra deck monster. This isn't that good as a third effect, just from the point that if your opponent reads this card, they will summon something with over 1500 attack, destroy that, and then progress using their extra deck monsters. So this on its own isn't going to be good enough, but I have a feeling that the other sports within this should help it. So the second card is Theo the Dragma Iron Hammer. This is a level 4 light spellcast effect monster with 1800 attack and 1500 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name once per turn each. 1. If a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. 2. Cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. And 3. You can target one face-up monster that was special summoned from the extra deck until the end of this turn. This card gains 600 attack, and if it does, that target loses 600 attack. So the first and second effects seem to be the same as the first card. This might be generic effects within the entire archetype. The attack stat on this is quite decent for a level 4 monster. And if you're able to use the third effect, this card becomes a 2400 attack monster, and your opponent losing 600 attack means, to me, it's like draining their attack to absorb their attack. That's kind of how the interaction of this card works. So potentially you could deal with a monster with up to 3000 attack, because you can drain their monster to 2400 and make this card 2400. So if you're against an extra deck monster, you can just crash into it, and obviously with this second effect, since this can't be destroyed by battle with an extra deck monster, that's how that would interact. And that's kind of, I think, the idea that Konami was going with this. It does seem like an interesting deck idea, and it's even, I can see it being run outside of these decks, because it's a spellcaster and you've got quite a lot of spellcaster support as well. Right, the third card is Addin the Dragomir Oracle. This is a level 4 light spellcaster effect monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name once per turn each. So the first effect is if a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. Second effect is cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. So this is generic within the archetype, and the third effect is its unique effect. If this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one Dragma monster from your deck, except add in the Dragomir Oracle. This is a really good effect. The third effect enables you to not only search for a Dragma monster, but to bring it instantly to your field. So if you've got higher level monsters, there's no real cost to it other than discard. It doesn't require you to tribute anything, it doesn't require you to discard. You can just instantly bring out potentially a higher level monster. So next we have Fleur de Lis, the Dragomite. This is a light level 8 spellcast effect monster, 2500 attack and 2500 defense. And you can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn each. During the main phase, if a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then, if you control another Dragma monster, you can negate the effects of one face-up monster on the field until the end of this turn. And 2, when your Dragma monster declares an attack, you can make all Dragma monsters you control gain 500 attack. So the first effect lets you bring this out even on your opponent's turn, or even on your turn if your opponent has an extra deck monster, or if you have an extra deck monster. So that's decent, you're not relying on your opponent too heavily. And being able to negate the effects of a face-up monster, being able to instantly disrupt them, is one of the main ways of dealing with your opponent's cards as of the moment. Many decks have specific ways in how they play. Some of them are cookie cutter decks, or you have ones that just naturally have to chain in a certain way to get the best effects to work. The second effect, the attack gain, is also okay. That would make this card a 3000 attack beta for the turn, and since this applies to all your Dragma monsters, if you've got a full field, you're getting potentially 2500 points more damage than you would without this effect. All of this damage stacks up, and the more attack points they can gain, the more likely you are to OTK, or to bring your opponents to a point where they can't use some of their cards, such as Solemn Warning, any of the Solemn cards, Solemn Strike, which is one of the basic ways to kind of stop your opponent from using their cards. The next card is Maximus Drachma. This is a level 8 light spellcaster effect monster with 1500 attack and 3000 defense. So this is kind of like your defensive wall for the deck. You can use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn each. 1, you can banish one Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Lynx monster from your graveyard to special summon this card from your hand. And 2, during your main phase, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. I'll also send 2 monsters with different names from your extra deck to the graveyard. Also, your opponent sends 2 monsters from their extra deck to the graveyard. The first effect to special summon is means that so long as you're running extra deck monsters and it's been a bit of a duel already and you've gotten rid of something, this can be brought out very easily. The second effect does restrict your ability to special summon from the extra deck for the turn, and it does require you to kind of a little bit of self-sacrifice. You have to get rid of 2 extra deck monsters, but the risk is sometimes worth it. There are some decks that your opponent might be running where the extra deck cannot have absolutely everything they want in there, so every extra monster becomes a key card for them. So making them send 2 monsters from their extra deck to the graveyard, even if it's not doing too much, it could be doing a lot worse for your opponent than you might think. The removing of 2 cards isn't really that big of a deal. I prefer you've got the Zaborg, the Mega Monarch, which can destroy half of both players' decks by simply banishing it when it's summoned to the field. That's more effective, but I think this is part of that whole rogue strategy of just extra deck elimination. But if you can manage to get into this card multiple times, you're set up, and this actually also works more effectively if you're able to use a couple of them, because the first effect works with the second effect, because you're constantly discarding to your graveyard. That means you could just bring out another one, potentially removing up to 6 cards, and there's probably some sort of recovery within the deck itself as well. The next card seems to be the boss monster for the deck. This is Tetra Dragma, the Heart of Dogma. It's a level 11 light spellcaster effect monster with 3200 attack and 3200 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned by its own effect. 1. You can target 4 fusion, synchro, xyz, and or link monsters in either graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, banish those targets. 2. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a special summoned monster, destroy as many opponent's attack position monsters as possible, then inflict 800 damage to your opponent for each fusion, synchro, link, or xyz monster destroyed by this effect. So this is your absolute end for the extra deck. The ability to get rid of your opponent's extra deck monsters from their graveyard means they're not likely to be able to recover them. So this works with the boss monster that is more defensive, that was just above. So the 2 effects kind of stack with each other. The second effect doesn't actually have to be on an extra deck monster, it just has to be a special summon monster. So if you can do that, you can wipe out all their attack monsters. If your opponent is going full force, a lot of people just run attack position monsters. It means that even if you don't get the burn damage from the second part of the second effect, you're able to wipe out their attack position monsters. But keep in mind, if your opponent is running link monsters, they always have to be in attack mode, so you can guarantee this card working. There are also other cards which can force your opponent's monsters to be in attack position, so if you can run some of those alongside this, that's even better. The next card we have is Dogmatic Dragma. This is their go-to field spell. You can use the second and third effects of this card's name once per turn each. 1. Your opponent cannot target Dragma monsters you control with the effects of monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. So this provides all your Dragma monsters with protection from extra deck monsters. 2. If your Dragma monster battles an opponent's monster after damage calculation, you can destroy that opponent's monster. So if they've got any sort of battle protection on them, this kind of gets rid of that. And the third effect is, if this card in the field zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can make both players send 1 monster from their extra deck to the graveyard. So this kind of further supports the removal of the extra deck and the distraction of it. If you can do this several times over, then you can wipe out up to about 3 cards. The problem with this is it's too reliant on your opponent. That third effect is only being destroyed by an opponent's card effect. It would have been much simpler if they said if it's destroyed by a card effect, because that way you could trigger it yourself. This is too reliant on your opponent, and your opponent isn't likely to do this because they don't want to help you out. We next have Disciple of the Nadir. This is a normal spell card, which says you can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then add one Dragma monster or one Albus the Nullius Filius from your deck or graveyard to your hand with attack less than or equal to the sent monsters. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. So this can help to bring out some of your monsters by getting rid of your extra deck card, and it allows you to search for a Dragma monster, so that's okay as an effect, as a rotor for the deck. But I prefer the original monster, the first one I've discussed. It also locks you out of the extra deck for the turn, which, depending on your situation, could be a bit of a problem. We have Dragma Punishment. This is a normal trap card, and you can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard with attack equal to or higher than that target, and if you do, destroy that monster. Until the end of your next turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. This is another one of those cards that locks you out of your extra deck, but I suppose you would be able to get rid of one of the better cards, depending on what you send to your graveyard. So it's their version of some sort of destruction. We have Dragma Encounter. This is a normal trap card. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. To activate one of these effects, special summon one Dragma monster or one Albus the Nullius Filius from your hand, or take one Dragma monster or one Albus the Nullius Filius from your graveyard and either add it to your hand or special summon it. So this is one way of getting out your Dragma monsters, which is an okay effect. This gives you kind of options, because you can actually just even recover cards if it's been a longer duel and you're kind of not drawing into the cards you need. You can recover something from the graveyard to kind of extend your combos a little bit longer. Now here is the Albus the Nullius Filius card that we were just discussing. This is a level 4 Dark Dragon effect monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense. You can use the effect of this card's name once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can discard one card, fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck. Using this card you control and monsters your opponent controls as fusion material. And so this card can act a little bit like a super polymerization, being able to fusion summon, but this effect only works when it's normal or special summoned. So unless you're able to do this multiple times, you're only able to do this as many times as you can bring this card out. Although saying that, it's a level 4, so it's not difficult to bring out. It doesn't require any tributes, and it can be summoned quite easily. You also have quite generic fusion monsters out there. For example, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon just requires 2 dark types, this being a dark type. If your opponent's running a dark based deck, you can just use your opponent's card and this card, or you can use other cards you have to bring out other fusion monsters if necessary. And we also have a fusion monster here as well. This is, I'm not going to say the first word, but it's the Ashen Dragon. It's a level 8 Dark Dragon Fusion Effect monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense. It requires Albus the Nullius Filius and one monster with 2500 or more attack. You can use the third effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. It gains attack equal to total original levels of the monsters used as material for this card's fusion times 100. 2. After this card is fusion summoned, this card is unaffected by activated effects from any other monster that was special summoned from the extra deck until the end of this turn. And 3. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, because it was sent there this turn, you can take one Dragma monster or one Albus Nullius Phileas from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it. So the first effect, its summoning condition isn't too bad. Most likely your opponent will be running monsters with more than 2,500 attack. So actually bringing this out is not too difficult, and is a decent way of getting rid of your opponent's monsters without having to run very random, generic fusion monsters within your extra deck. The first effect is actually really good to bulk out its attack, and this is a permanent attack gain. It's not until the end of this turn, which is brilliant. Albus itself is a level 4 monster, and most monsters 2,500 or more attack are level 7 or higher. So you're looking at a minimum of roughly 11 levels. So this card could start off with 3,600 attack. For a level 8 monster, that is quite good. The second effect prevents your opponent's extra deck monsters from kind of dealing with this card, even if it is until the end, only until the end of this turn. If you're able to get the amount of damage on board, this can actually be game-ending for your opponent. And of course, you have to have some sort of graveyard recovery from it as well. So if it is sent there, you're able to actually recover one of your Dragma monsters or Albus, either to your hand or to special summon it. So even if your opponent manages to deal with this card, you have backup strategies, which is always a good idea. So what do you think of this new archetype? Do you like it being a bit of a rogue strategy? Do you think it could be seeing any sort of meta play? And how best do you think this card will interact with the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh? Leave your comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.